Welcome back to another edition of Chronicles Story. I'm here today with Mr. Khalid, a prominent member of the Guyana's Muslim Society, who will be giving us a little bit more insight on the Muslim holiday of ul-Adha. Mr. Khalid, good afternoon.
Pleasant good afternoon to you, Alisa.
We'll start off with you telling me a bit more about yourself. Who is Khalid?
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for having me in your program. So my name is Khalid, as you would have rightly pronounced. I'm actually a teacher. I teach Islamic studies. I do actually lecture online. I'm attached to a quite prominent Islamic institution in Maryland, USA, and I offer online classes in Arabic language and Islamic studies. I actually completed my Islamic studies sometime since in the early 2000s. Actually, I studied in South Africa. So ever since I came back, I've traveled throughout the Caribbean and other parts of the world, teaching Islam and lecturing. And here I am now in Guyana, and I operate a small business. And besides that, I also do my online lectures.
Could you give us a little insight on what the term ul-Adha means?
So ul-Adha or Adha, it's an Arabic term, and it simply means the celebration of a sacrifice. In this case, it's a celebration to honor the sacrifice of Prophet Abraham, on whom be peace, when he was commanded by God Almighty to sacrifice his son to prove his love to God Almighty.
Due to the current pandemic, how has the celebratory process for this religious holiday changed from previous ones?
So, like in every other religion or gatherings, there has been a lot of changes, and usually for this holiday, you would have a lot of Muslims congregating at at CIOG, which is on Woolford Avenue. We would congregate there for prayers. And there are other areas also that would have a large number of people. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic this year, we have scaled down a lot. So many persons are actually preferring to stay home and just do whatever is needed to be done without congregating. The other thing I wanted to also stress on was the fact that this particular holiday, it is also symbolic of a greater occasion that is taking place at this very point in time in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, which is called al-Hajj, or the pilgrimage. So this year, because of the pandemic, there is only about 1,000 pilgrims that are actually doing the Hajj or the pilgrimage this year. Usually it's about 2.5 million, 3 million people that congregate in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca, to perform the pilgrimage. But fortunately this year, many Guyanese would have also wanted to try, who would have had their tickets booked already, they wouldn't have been able to go. Okay. So this holiday in many ways, is scaled down from what it would usually be. And we feel a bit sad about that, but it's a blessing in disguise, in the sense that we are still able to spend more time with our families behind closed doors, as well as focus a lot more on the true meaning behind the Eid celebrations, instead of being more celebratory, as per se.
What customary activities are hosted by the Muslim community during this time?
So for those of us who would have been close to Muslims or Muslim communities, it would be customary for you during this time of the year to be asking Muslims, for example, whether I can get my meat or get some meat this year. All right, so most of the times it has a lot to do with distributing the meat that comes from the animals that we slaughter, and few persons would also opt to cook from those animals and share with the poor and needy and with their neighbors, etc., entertain families also. But during this Eid, or this celebration, we're so tired after running around with slaughtering animals and distributing meat, that meet that we hardly actually have time to be at home with family, etc. So unlike the previous Eid or previous Muslim holiday, which culminates Ramadan or the fasting, unlike that holiday, this one is more about distributing meat and less about eating and drinking.
So the celebration is extended outside of the Muslim community, because I know as Guyanese, we say that there is no separation of holiday, or I should say segregation of holiday. Everyone celebrates an holiday, whether you're of a different ethnic background or from a different religious group. So there is no segregation going on. Anyone can celebrate.
Oh yeah, I mean, this holiday is for everyone to partake in it. Of course, the greater message of ul-Adha is what we always strive to educate people about, because you know, if you're a Christian, you would be familiar with Abraham, and you'd be familiar also with the reason why we commemorate this holiday. But if you, or let's say you're from the Hindu religion or otherwise, you may not be so au fait with this story or this celebration. But nevertheless, I think throughout Guyana, whichever holiday comes, you know, people are generally festive in their approach. So persons in advance will be asking about the meat and about, you know, activities that we may be having as Muslims. So we do have, I come from a community that is predominantly Christian, and I don't know if they celebrate with us or they just look forward to the meat, but they do acknowledge that we are having a celebration or a Muslim holiday. This particular day, Muslims usually would either slaughter an animal by themselves, or it is permissible in Islam also to have 7 persons come together and partake in one animal. So if this is the case, each person would be given a share of an animal that they would have paid for, and then they would then take this share and distribute among their family members, their neighbors and friends, co-workers, etc. After that, you know, persons would do whatever they want to do with the meat. But usually in my family, when we have ul-Adha celebration, we would first ensure that the neighbors are taken care of and the villagers are taken care of. And after that, whatever meat is left, we would normally prepare some meals and, you know, entertain our neighbors and friends and all the family members. So there's a lot of celebration, as per se, in this particular holiday. As I've said before, it's more about ensuring that our friends and neighbors and all our colleagues, you know, that they are taken care of with regards to the meat.
So personally, what does this holiday mean to you?
Oh, so I'm not too big on the cooking and the festivities. So I like to reflect more on the meaning, the true meaning behind this holiday. And as the Quran states, that it is not the meat nor the blood that reaches God Almighty, but it is your God consciousness that reaches Him. So I personally use this occasion to reflect a lot more on my connection with my Creator. And also, if you reflect on one of the greater reasons of this holiday, you would see that Abraham, on whom be peace, who was a prophet of God Almighty, that he was someone who stood up for what was right at all times, and he was never fearful of being persecuted even. There are lots of stories in the Quran that speak about the sacrifices of Abraham. His sacrifice wasn't only in obeying God Almighty's command to slaughter his own son, to sacrifice his own son. This was not the only sacrifice that he made. He even stood up against his own father, who was an idol worshipper, who was someone that would worship images and statues and idols and so on. He stood up against him and even faced persecution from people, and, you know, the anger and wrath of his father. So he sacrificed his own personal comforts to ensure that God Almighty alone is worshipped. And this is the whole essence of Islam, that we as Muslims believe that none should be worshipped besides the Creator, as we say in Arabic, Allah. So I use this holiday to reflect more on my relationship with God Almighty and the sacrifices that I need to make in order to obey God Almighty. So, for example, everyone wants to have a nice time and party and drink and all these things. And you know, for us as Muslims, we understand that it takes a huge sacrifice to stay away from these things. Like having fun, partying, having a lot of friends and music, and these things are very attractive on the outside. It would be very easy for a person to be drawn towards these things, but it does require a certain amount of sacrifice, where you sacrifice, you know, your own whims and fancies just to please God Almighty. He says, you know what, you should not do this, so you sacrifice your own desires to please Him.
During this period, is there any message that you would like to send to your Muslim brothers and sisters and the nation at large?
Oh yeah, I just want to say to all of my Muslim brothers and sisters, may God Almighty accept your sacrifices. May He grant you the true understanding and message of this occasion. And I urge all of my fellow Guyanese to join the Muslims in understanding the true purpose of this holiday, which is to sacrifice, to make sacrifices to please God Almighty. And if you are struggling with any issues within yourself or beyond, just know that in order for you to achieve or to overcome these struggles, you would have to sacrifice, you'd have to give up something. Whatever it is that you have to give up, then you should do it only to please God Almighty. And you know, just this morning I was telling one of my younger brothers that a person who is addicted to drugs, for example, in order for that person to overcome, they would have to give up that pleasure that they seek in drugs. So give up something to gain something. And at this very time in our country, we're having a lot of issues, and you know, most of it revolves around the politics, of course. And you know, there are lots of ill feelings out there that people have for each other, and we would have to, in order for us to achieve peace in this country, in order for us to achieve oneness, we would have to give up our petty feelings, we would have to give up our desires, our egos, etc. So I urge this entire nation to understand the true meaning of ul-Adha, which is to sacrifice something to gain the pleasure of God Almighty. Give up, you know, all of these petty feelings and do it solely to please God Almighty, and inshallah, God willing, we will be able to all enjoy the fruits of our sacrifices.